minute. Really? By whom? You all there?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you get that? This meeting is being recorded?
That's Maureen. I'm recording
Yeah.
it.
Okay. So, minutes from the 24th. Any questions, comments, and changes?
A move to accept.
If not, second?
Seconded by Krista.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. The minutes have been approved. So, Haley, you're on for updates.
Okay, I'll do my best. So first I wanted to say thank you to Carol for reaching out this week and keeping an eye on things online. I'm hoping that I'm answering your questions as best as I can. Since Krista just mentioned the S-229, the act relating to the State Board of Education approval of independent schools, I'll start there. The Senate Ed has asked for someone from the State Board to come in and testify. I sent John a updated version of the bill yesterday, and then Krista, I just sent you one, I think is the same one that's online. Jeannie sent me she said it's the most recent, but it has the same number, so I think it's the same thing. This week they did add in a section about the special ed conversation that the study committee had this summer, so if you want to read that over and read the email that John sent yesterday, and then it looks like, Krista, they have you for Friday at 2:30 was the first time that could work. I told them that you need to get back to Jeffersonville by 4:30, and she said that you should be able to make it because it shouldn't take too long.
Okay, so sorry, what time is that now?
Friday at 2:30.
Friday at 2:30. Okay.
And did you want to have anybody come with you, or do you want to just do it on your own?
Yeah, so I mean, we can talk about that when on that part of the agenda.
Okay, perfect.
And we can figure out who else can make it.
Sure. Other updates, pre-K, there's been a lot of testimony about pre-K. They're still working off of the language from AOE and AHS, and they've heard a lot from some of the advocates and some parents. As you saw in my notes there, last week was Mental Health Advocacy Day, so there were some parents there talking about special ed and pre-K, and a lot of it overlapped. That's going on. There's continuing to take testimony on that this week, as well as the special education finance proposed legislation. Yeah.
Haley, are we still on Senate Ed here?
No, I'm just talking about what's happening in general.
In general.
Senate Ed is taking testimony on pre-K this week, as is House Education. So they're both on that subject, and then House Ed is doing the special ed finance bill. Then this morning, in House Ed, Emily Byrne and Secretary Holcomb did a overview of the AOE budget. So they talked about staffing levels and a lot of the things that are happening at the agency, like the statewide longitudinal data system, the new grant management system, the new chart of accounts. So there were some updates to that. And then they also went over the budget book. So I think it's still in draft form, but it's pretty close to being done. There's just some typos that have to be fixed that we found this morning. And that's available online on the House Ed web page too, if you want to take a look.
So may I quickly ask, the two positions for pre-K and AOA for new staffing, that's still in the budget. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Are there any other questions about what's happening over here?
Is that it?
That's all I have, yeah. Unless you have specific questions, I can try to answer.
Yeah,
there is the education finance conversation happening too. If you guys have been watching the news, Janet Ansel had an opinion piece 2 weeks ago now, and so she talked about what the administration's proposing and then what her committee's proposing. And so I'm not a money expert, so I apologize if I get this wrong. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But I think I'm getting that it would move. It would take more to go into the ed fund. It would take more money from income tax, raising income tax, and lower property tax. Okay, yeah.
What's that, Bill?
Yeah.
dedicated sales tax, reduce the
all of it.
tax. And
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you, Bill.
Anything else
Yeah.
for Haley?
Peter, may I
Yes.
ask? This is a question to you, Haley.
Mhm.
Do you have any sense as to how the special education community is responding to the language in 229 that's been included there?
That's a good question. I'm not sure if they are directly related because they're in two different committees. Senate Ed is working on S229 and the House Committee is working on the special ed finance. I'm not sure if the two chairs have discussed it.
Yeah, I'm really asking more about people from the special ed advocacy groups like Joanne Unruh, Nicole Mace. They were on the special committee that worked with Philip Baruth on this, and they understand and have the concerns about the independent schools and how adequately they accommodate special education needs. And I guess what I'm getting at is, have you heard any commentary from Joanne Unruh or Nicole Mace or others about 229 as it now stands with the special ed language in there?
I have not heard anything from them since they added in the special ed language to S229.
Yeah.
it's strictly the finance piece, is it not?
Correct.
It doesn't have anything to do with the service providers, and that's when they'd get wound up. As I understand it, that's supposed to be taken up in a separate bill.
Correct, yes. Nicole Mace is scheduled to testify in Senate Ed on S229 on Friday, right before Krista. And so that might be part of her comments, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Bill, any more questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Bill, I think that the language in 229 now is a good deal more than about finance.
Well, you're the expert.
Yeah, well, I'm not really. I'm kind of clueless about this, but there's a piece about there's a lot in here about special ed and the conditions under which it's provided and accessed. So, but I really am not very expert in this area. So I wish somebody could look at. I'm thinking about Krista's testimony on Friday. Krista, I presume you want to go into that meeting with a really deep understanding of both parts of S229, one being the financial capacity part, which is pretty straightforward to me anyway, and the special ed parts, which were discussed at great length by the special summer committee. It might be useful, Krista, if you were able to have a conversation with Joanne Unruh and Nicole beforehand to find out if they're satisfied with the language that's in there.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. I thought when Bill said it that the bill was about finance, I thought he was referring to the House Education Committee's bill about special ed finance. Bill, what is strictly about finance, S229, related to the independent schools, the section about independent school is about practice. You're correct. And that language came from Joanne Unruh to that special committee, so I believe that she's probably in favor of it. I haven't spoken to her, but they did draft that language directly from what she brought to the committee at the last meeting, I believe, maybe the second to last.
Okay.
I was going to say this language actually looks very familiar.
Yeah.
I was going to say it looks like pretty much verbatim going through. And I do wonder how independent schools are going to view this language, because I thought a lot of this, what was in here, was not things that they really wanted to see in the language. So I think that's going to be kind of the interesting part.
Can you send out the latest version of 229?
Yeah, that's what I was just going to ask, Bill. Yes.
I think
Maureen, do we have the most up-to-date language on 229?
I will go ahead and send it just to make sure.
Yeah, I think what I sent to you yesterday, along with my memo, I included the language of 229 as of Haley. What draft do you have? I have 2 February at 10:07.
Yeah, I have one. I think Jeannie said 1.1 is the most up to date.
Yep, that's what I have.
Yeah. So she just, like I said, she just sent me another version, but I think it matches the one from yesterday afternoon. But I'll send you the one that she sent me just to make sure that we have.
Could you do that? Can you send that? Can you send all of this, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
The one that I think is the most interesting on page 9. Page 9, and let's see, where am I? It's at the top of the page. The 4, just in the 4th line, and it talks about the parental rights, including discipline procedures. And that was something I know that was a sticking point when we were going through the rulemaking process, was that we wanted students on IEPs to have access to parental rights and discipline rights. And so that was interesting to me that was put in there, because that was one of the things that the state board was advocating for and got a lot of pushback. So it's nice to see it in this language coming from the legislature, that they felt the same way.
And when did that go in? When did that go in?
This special ed language, wasn't it this week?
Yeah, it was. Yesterday was the first time they did the walkthrough with that language in there.
The memo that I sent to you yesterday explained this.
Yes, I see that. I'm looking at draft 1.1. That's no longer no longer the document that's most current.
It is still most current.
It is. Okay. Okay. Good. Okay. Anything else? We're going to be talking about this some more anyway, aren't we? So. Okay. So no more questions on that. We'll go to. I got to bring up my my agenda. Excuse me. Can someone get that?
Do you want to give me do you want to move beyond the update, and you want me to give a response to legislative requests?
Sure, that'd be fine.
Okay. So at our last meeting, I was asked to follow up with Dave Sharp about his request for efficiency review, and our committee felt that task was too large and to do as a wholesale, but moving forward we would look forward to looking for efficiency in all proposals, and reiterated that we're really looking for equity, efficiency, and excellence on all three. And I did ask if there was more of a narrow request from his committee on whether there were certain policies he wanted us to look at, because the request was pretty blanket. Is there any, the request originally was, is there any policies that are maybe not as effective and should be amended? And it was a very large request. So I haven't heard back from him on that, but I did put that out, and just seeing if there was any more narrowing of a request. I guess last week we got about like a 12-hour notice about could we go to the legislator and talk about independent schools. And
you mean the Senate Ed?
Yeah, in Senate Ed. So it was about like a 12-hour window. So it didn't work out. And then we got the request yesterday again to come in, and so for this week. So it does look like we're going to be coming in, as Haley said, on Friday at 2:30. So that
I'd appreciate if we're all notified of these dates and times too. I haven't. This is the first I've heard of this.
Yeah, well, this is actually the time is Haley just said it for the first time because she was working on this. This is very quick turnaround. We're not being given a lot of time. Like that's what I said. We got about a 12-hour notice before, and so we're just trying to make something work. So that's what Haley just got the appointment. That's why she set in this meeting. So I didn't know until now that was going to be at 2:30. And luckily, by chance, my school was canceled today, which I don't work on Wednesdays, but it means our Friday is switching days. So I actually now have the day off I was supposed to work. So I'm glad I can make it. So once we confirm dates, I will definitely let you know. It's just been kind of a roller coaster ride with the requests.
Okay. No, I understand.
Yeah.
It's always short notice.
Right. And so, so like I said, that's just notice, and we can talk about that when we get to that item, I, if we could talk about who else could come and what do we want that testimony to look like.
Yeah, it's worth talking about. In more specificity then, because there are anyway.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So is that it for updates?
Yep.
Okay. So Bill,
before you move on, I have to go to a joint committee hearing. So if you want to just email me who can come on Friday with Krista, that would be really great.
Okay.
Unless you need me to stay.
Is Maureen still on?
I'm here.
Okay, so we can let Maureen know. Would that be good enough, and she can let you know, or wouldn't that be more
Haley?
correct?
I can email Haley.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, we'll decide that today, I assume. So.
Oh yeah, no. That's it.
So the special ed and pre-K statements, the reports. Bill, do you want to weigh in first?
No, I'll let you go first.
You'll let me go first. Well, I did the pre-K. Did everybody read my statement?
Yeah, yes? I did.
No? Anybody else?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
Krista?
I did too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So, any questions in terms of what's going on here? And I mean, my question is, what do we do with these statements and reports? Do we just? I mean, are we going to take positions on things, or how do we proceed with what we're doing with these reports and other things that we're doing as a subcommittee? But I'll take questions on the pre-K if there are any.
Well, I think your question as to what we're doing with this stuff is very important. And in your packet following Peter's stuff is something I put sort of in bullet points if we wanted to express any of these things.
Okay. Well, do you want to jump in on that, Bill?
Well, I've got this copy that came out of the printer in about 6-point type, so I'm having a hard time reading my own stuff. The area in which we have the highest per pupil cost in the staffing is special ed. So we endorse both the UVM and the DMG reports. I didn't like the DMG report very much. I like the UVM report a whole lot better.
Hold on. I'm confused. Are we looking at Peters 166, or are we looking at something else?
I think we're looking at something else.
We're looking at Bill's special ed, and then there was I know we're all over the place on this, but the question is, we can talk about these reports, but I think Bill and I are both also concerned about what are we doing with this, or where do we stand on these issues as a committee and possibly as a board, and then what are we doing with this? I would hope we're not doing this just for our own edification, but there's some purpose to this. So that was my question.
Well, let me ask you this. I think this is a very important question. Peter, when you wrote your piece, what did you have in mind as to what would happen with it?
Well, I wasn't clear, and quite honestly, that affected what I was writing, because at one point I was writing something more, almost from a personal perspective in terms of the need for pre-K and early childhood, and for working families and for the state and the economy and all. and this had a history of having a lot of administrationally it's been very cumbersome between AOE or CCD and AOE, and I hope this clarifies it. But as I wrote in this, the private providers will still be overseen by CCD because they're businesses or private businesses. AOE is fully taking on the public providers.
Who's your audience? Who is your audience?
The audience is first us, because we're trying to look at what the intent and the purpose of these bills are in terms of language, and then beyond that, that's the question. But the first audience is us, the board members, as I see it. That's what Bill and I were trying to do, is just trying to encapsulate through bullets and whatnot, just as terse as possible, what our read was on these two fronts, special ed and the pre-K. I mean, these both. I mean, this was obviously coming as a result of the two bills that came out of House Ed. I mean, that's why we got on it.
Well, I think so. I'd like to state
go ahead.
the question as to what are we going to do with these things, because they're general opinion pieces. I mean, we have three of them actually. One is a piece about efficiency. Bill wrote a version, and I wrote a version, and then
right.
Krista has sort of tried to meld them together some. Then there's a piece on SPED, and then a piece on pre-K. And I guess I'm not at all clear as to what the hell we're doing with these three pieces of paper. Are we going to publish them? Are we going to what's the point?
I think this came out of our meeting we decided because we had a request from the House Ed Committee to look at these things and produce something. I mean, that was what impetus this whole process, was that the House Ed Committee asked, would like us to review reports and to give feedback. The Senate Ed Committee also asked the same thing, is to give some feedback after going through. And so I guess my question to this committee is, what do you want the response to be? And I thought it was you wanted to create these reports, but is that, would you want something different, or do you have a different vision for these reports?
No, I think that's what I would like, is one-page short statement, bullet points presented to the committees.
Yeah, I would concur with that. I think that's what we tried to do. But I mean, it could be probably more bullety, more direct, and not quite so long from my standpoint. But if you want us to, or want to do it over, or make it more terse and direct, we can. But I guess so. If we did this, then we would just forward this to the committee for their pleasure, or their. I mean, to
me, this is something that you said you were going to bring back to the full board at our meeting.
Yeah.
And so that way the full board would be able to vote on it.
Yeah.
So that's what we have space for on the agenda for next month.
Well, okay. Well, then we really should both Bill and I have something to vote on, because I don't think these statements are I mean, there is no.
Go over the general gist of the statements.
Okay.
So could you repeat that, though?
SPED first.
Sure.
Okay. If I finally found the right one in my packet, which was stapled together the wrong way. Everything you need to know about SPED, and tomorrow will be different. Support the census-based funding grant that is proposed by the UVM group, which will get out of the record-keeping business of everybody, and it should have been done years ago. The extraordinary expenses have a multiplier of 5.9 times the cost before the eligibility kicks in. Now, that's going to be about $72,000 or something, and then the local district's going to have to eat that cost. And so there is another piece in there that the district would get some money to apply for this. But I think that's too steep a cliff. I think Dave Sharp thinks that it's okay, but I think it's a little stiff. And the accountability for the money is always a problem when you go to a block grant, because it'll be pretty soon, in a few years' time, it'll be absorbed into general state aid. And what they're saying is a 30% grant before the paperwork kicks in. And that is going to be a real problem in time. But the record keeping is what's really the problem there. So that's that point. Disputes and mediation state review team, I like that. It's better than the arbitration method that we've got now. And training, 8.75% of the money is reserved for training and things of that sort. And that's going to have to be used, and that has to be appropriated, but I'm fearful that that will erode over time. Independent schools, Secretary sets the rate schedule and out-of-state costs or caps. I think that's appropriate, but it's going to be a little bit of a battle in terms of those setting the rates. And the annual report, I think, is appropriate. Cost of pullouts is not addressed. Mental health, and Krista and I had a conversation about that. We're not even beginning to touch that problem, and I think we need to raise it. And so that's a brief summary.
So what would a statement from the state board then look like? I mean, because that's more of a review of what is out there. So I'm thinking big picture, what does the state board think is a good idea? And what does that big picture look like? And that's not a question for you, but a question for everybody.
I guess
I'm hearing from everybody, from multiple documents, that whatever needs to be done and change is made, that it needs to be mindful of giving time. Another document I know John brought forward in reminding us in having the 5-year plan. So whatever transition is being made, is that it's a thoughtful transition with specific goals in mind. And just like Billy said, going from having one threshold to another and just changing in 1 year could have some pretty major complications and impacts for local districts. But, as a state board's policy that we do make change deliberately and with a 5-year plan. Is that a concept that we could get behind while looking at these reports?
Good.
Might I just interject? I spoke to Bill quite a lot about this subject, but I think what we're trying to do with special ed in schools and what AHS is trying to do with families has to be better coordinated and linked. I think we're really the state is they're fighting two fronts separately, and it should be the same front, and it's just not coordinated at all. As far as I can see, the services that are provided for families and what's going on at the schools is, for the most part, not coordinated. And I mentioned to Bill that restorative justice has an interesting way of dealing with kids that go through this program, and they do link the families. The families have to be part of the service, part of the plan. And I think of that in regards to what isn't happening with special ed and as again the home front. So that's my 2 cents on this in terms of big picture.
And how do we relate that back to the 2 reports? Are you saying?
Well, I just think it's something that it seems like it hasn't really been brought up as you're looking at these 2 different entities, the proverbial silos, and you're not talking about what we're going through in terms of all the trauma, everything that we've heard in terms of this situation, both on the home fronts and at schools, and they're directly linked. But you hear I haven't heard, and if anybody else has, in terms of how this can be addressed at the same time. or coordinated. I haven't heard anything on that. Anything.
Krista, to answer your question about the big picture, my perspective would be that the big picture is that we spend twice as much as the average of other states on special education, and our results are observably not as good as they could be. So, to me, that's a burning platform. That's a situation calling for urgently for reform. We're spending tons of money and we're getting very ordinary results. I'm not saying that it has to be done overnight by any means. I think a 5-year plan is fine, but it should be regarded as an urgent problem, and one that requires an intense and concentrated effort to lay out a plan so that we bring our spending levels under control, and so that we significantly improve the quality of services being delivered to children.
Which is directly linked to the PICUS report, which was 6 or 8 years ago, that really highlighted special ed as a glaring example of where money could be saved on the ed front.
I would probably word it more tactfully, but the point is still the same.
Mm-hmm.
So the big picture statement coming from the board could be something is even what John began to say, that we spend more than other states and we're not getting the results we want. We also have more students being identified, especially with emotional issues, which is a little bit different strategy than the academic, and we kind of lump the two together. We put academic, we put emotional, all in the same, but we're not teasing out that piece. And so would a statement be more of a paragraph that this is an issue that needs to be addressed, and the funding mechanism needs to be dealt with, and if any changes are made, to change them in a way that is not draconian on local districts, and to figure out a better delivery model.
And we can support the UVM in regards to how they're addressing this. I mean, do
we have to support the studies, or just agree with, I don't know if we all.
Take your words, but they made some ideas, and does anybody disagree with what they're proposing? The block grant versus the student-based formulas.
Well, I think it's covered in the bill, or we could work it into it. The way this thing is organized, it follows the outline of the bill, and I wanted to stick with that kind of organization because it's what they're familiar with.
Okay.
Who is going to write this?
Well, somebody should.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think we can write it in this meeting.
No.
Bill, you seem to be the logical one who has an interest in this, or Peter.
Well, I can do it.
We'll work together, and Krista should probably be involved too.
Yeah, and could we agree as a committee that, can we keep this to a short, almost paragraph reaction?
Yes.
This is something we're going to also be hearing the reports at our next meeting. And so the way the next meeting is set up, we have the UVM report and then the MG, and then we have some time to go over whatever suggestions come from this committee. And I don't think for that one statement it needs to be in the weeds. It needs to be more of a broad statement, so that way it can be agreed on by the board. So if we are asked to go in and testify, we have something to stand on, and keeping the statement 30,000 feet above, and keeping it to our principles.
Absolutely.
So on the pre-K front, I can be very brief. That we support the bill, but we will. So let me just say that I spoke to superintendents, and I had a long talk with Amy, and the superintendents are nervous in terms of what is still on their front in regards to their responsibilities in regards to pre-K. for the public providers, and in coordination between publics and privates and this and that. Amy said, you know, it's going to be clear the roles and whatnot, and so it should come out. So I don't feel that we have to take a stance in terms of any kind of criticism or different direction in what they're doing. I think we can just endorse them and just say that we'll, as it unfolds, it'll have to be monitored. But I don't think there's any need for us to.
Well, I think 166, our concern has always been really equity and that excellence piece. I mean, that's really, like, when we're looking at equity and access to high-quality programs, I think that's always been a concern of the state board, is that our kids from all socioeconomic statuses.
There are issues. Amy said that the numbers, I asked her about the numbers between public and private. There's quite a bit more, of course, private providers, and there are public, but the numbers are fairly stable. I was concerned that they're losing, because I know around here they've lost on privates, but you know, it's the numbers are, in terms of the number of eligible students, is also often the driving issue in regards to being able to sustain these programs in you know, rural areas. And I mean, in Chittenden County or in Burlington, oh my God, there's a ton of them, and the numbers are quite different when you go out further out. But I don't know how we can how to address that in terms of accessibility and who's accessing it. It's not mandatory, and it's really a question of what people can how they access and what they can afford.
Well, I think that's one of our equity concerns, you know, with 166, is that we are worried about rural parts of Vermont. You know, we're not worried about the urban centers, or, I mean, it's funny calling Burlington the urban center, but...
Well, I think it needs more research, Krista, because as Amy said, it really is a question of numbers. If you have only 3 or 4 kids, you cannot sustain programs on that basis. And then if they're kids coming from struggling parents and whatnot, that they don't even get the full amount and whatnot. So it's worth discussing, but I don't know how we can address it if you know, and trying to hold the budget at the same time. So I just, if you want to weigh in on that and suggest we should be paying more money and making it whatever, but I just don't know how we're going to get it. And you know, in this crazy bifurcated system, the way it was started between publics and privates, it went through some changes. There was at one point more privates available, and now I think when they opened up the statewide vouchers, that's changed the dynamics. And we heard from Ned Kirsch and Drew Ann LeBlanc a few years ago about that. So it's up to you how to handle it. But the way the bill is constructed in terms of transferring full authority for the public providers to AOE, and they're going to take it all on, all the paperwork, all the billing, all the payments. They're going to do it all. So.
Well, then I would think the only thing, you know, so I guess this is a question for the board. This came up at one of our meetings at the State House. Do we want to then make sure we advocate for the agency that they have the staff to make this happen?
Well, they did. The governor including in his budget, and that's what I just asked Haley, is that the agency did ask for 2 staff members, full-time members, and they got that. The governor, it's in the budget, and they've got that, and they feel like they have sufficient staffing in addition to what they need to take care of all of this from their standpoint.
The budget is not the budget until it passes out, so would we
No, I know, but the budget,
that?
It's in the governor's budget, and it's remained in the budget up to date. That's what I've been told. It's not, none of those positions have not been removed. Those two positions are in the budget. In the budgets that are being considered, I guess, in the both committees too. That's as much as I know. We can certainly, but I was concerned about that as well. But I was assured that those two positions are budgeted and remain in the budget. So
as a committee, I can ask you as chair, do you want a statement from this committee on that, or do you want to let it be?
we can discuss this at the board level or whatever. But I'd be glad to hear from other people. I'm neutral on this right now, so I don't in terms of what's being proposed. But if anybody else has strong feelings that we should direct legislature to do something otherwise, I'd be glad to hear from anybody.
Well, we seem to be floundering around a little bit in terms of what are we going to do on pre-K as well as special education.
Well, I think I made my position. I'm as I say, I'm neutral. I don't think we, from a board standpoint, we have to take a strong position. We can support what they're doing and go from there. From my standpoint on the pre-K, but as far as special ed, there are probably more concerns. But I'll be glad to.
In this time, Peter, could we, if we're floundering on these two, could we go to the response to the governor?
Sure.
Because I feel like we have more traction there.
Okay.
Because we have, we had Bill wrote a version and we had John wrote a version, and I took John's version and tried to kind of mediate the two ideas. And John, I would love your feedback on if that was too much watered down, or so I'd like some feedback on that.
Well, I think there certainly were improvements where you toned down my language and finally got gas language out there, things like that. That's all good. I think the bullet points, at least one of them, got awfully long and awfully muddy. I'm for sort of more brevity than, at least in one of those bullet points. I think it was you were trying to bring over some language from Bill's that. Anyway, so I guess in general, I thought it was fine. It did seem to lose some of its punch, and somewhere in the course of things, there had been an additional bullet point that I added later about consolidation, and that we need to leverage consolidation.
Oh, I must have had the old draft, yeah.
Remember that? And you remember we need to be prepared to radically improve the efficiency and equity of small schools or close them.
Yes, yeah.
And that didn't seem to make the cut. And
Oh, no, I apologize. I must have been working from the old draft.
Yeah, I think you were. And I actually wrote that partly with you in mind, thinking you would like. Yeah.
Well, no, because then I went back and added something, because it wasn't in there, I wrote something about I think that's where it got muddy.
Well, if you'd like, I can take your draft, add that back in, and do some tinkering, if you'd like. I think what you've got is very close, and my hope would be that when you get it the way you want it, you could take it to the board as a position piece, get them to sign off on it at the next meeting, and then just publish it. Just put it out there as a press release from the board.
Yeah. So I guess, would you send me that language? So I just want to make sure I have the correct. Paragraph.
Yeah.
I don't think we should touch consolidation in there.
I'm sorry?
Didn't you say there was some language on Act 46, are consolidating small schools? Yeah, as simply one of the several initiatives that we support for improving efficiency as well as enhancing equity and excellence. Yes.
So is this an endorsement of the commissions that the governor's proposing to close small schools?
No.
I don't think we should be touching that at all.
We're not talking.
The reason being that Act 46 was to form these new regionalized units who were to make those kinds of decisions. And so we'd be cutting off part of Act 46 as well as annoying the small schools people.
Right. Yeah, I don't even come close to that topic, the Governor's Commission. Some small schools closing will be a natural result of Act 46.
That was the whole idea.
Right.
But could you send that language out again, so that way
Yeah.
we could, if you send us that paragraph out, and I can add that in and see how people feel the way it's written.
Yeah.
Yeah, to all of us, that'd be great. Okay.
So, I mean, is there anything else in there that people want to add, take away, before I bring it to the full board?
No, I would like to see the latest rendition and whether we weigh in on beforehand or whatever. But I'd like to see the finished product before you're going to bring whatever you're proposing to the board for board's endorsement. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Well, tonight I can, Krista, if I may, I'll take your draft, add this language in about Equity 6, and maybe make some suggestions about tightening up elsewhere.
Yeah, and then there's a couple. If with that in, there's almost like 2 or 3 sentences that need to come out.
Right.
By adding that in.
You had asked about what are some comparative states.
Yes. Yeah.
Interestingly enough, a state that performs very similarly to Vermont in terms of excellence and equity, but does so at 80% of the cost, is New Hampshire.
That's what I was asking. One that had rural issues too.
Yeah. And another one, it's not so rural, but is Maryland. Similar, consistently high performance, just like Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts. Massachusetts is always the best, by the way.
I do know that New Hampshire has quite a bit of equity issues, though. There was a Supreme Court case that went through, and the Supreme Court basically told the legislature they had to deal with it. And they didn't tell them what it needed to be, but had to be kicked back because there is some gross inequities in the state. So I do want to be careful with that and mindful of what's going to happen in New Hampshire to address those equity issues. Because
that occurred over 15 years ago.
There was a recent one.
Well, there was a recent, but the original one was many, many, many years ago. But anyway.
I just have a family member on the Supreme Court in New Hampshire, and we talked about it, and it was last year, I believe, that it went through. So there is still some big changes to be happening in New Hampshire when it comes to the equity. So, and that's equity between schools, and not on statewide data, but on school-to-school data. So they're kind of going through their own Brigham decision moment, where the Supreme Court punted, and they basically pushed it back to the legislature. So that would be interesting data to compare, just if we had comparables, and do they match our goals, especially with the Brigham decision.
Yeah, this is
why don't you two work on that, and then just get whatever you come up with to us, and do we want to spend some time looking at that 229, and what didn't you want to talk about that, Krista?
I mean, that would be nice. And is there anybody that can join on Friday?
I'd like to try to make it. Yeah.
Can anybody else?
2:30, right?
Mhm.
I'm thinking about it. I think it would just be beautiful for John and I to sit there at the foot of the table together, grinning.
John, can you make it and grin?
I can grin, but I can't make it.
You can't make it? Okay. Can we have your picture?
Oh, that takes all the fun out of it, John.
So we'll have to be mindful of time. 2:30 Friday. That's going to be late for the day, and it may be subject to change, or you'll just have to keep us up to date, or whomever is going to be the point person here to let us know.
So I can keep you up to date with the times.
Okay.
So Connor, any interest in coming?
This is Friday?
Yep.
The only thing that worries me is I'll be missing for the next week. I'll be missing 3 days of school, so I don't really know if my teachers would be too happy with that.
I understand.
It's a long ride too.
Yeah, I'll be. I think I'm missing a little too much school right now, so I'm trying to rein it in a little bit.
I feel like this is every state board student rep senior year. They're always missing school so much because they're doing so much.
I mean, there's just so much that the more you're involved with, the less school you have, really.
Personalized learning.
So,
Okay.
Chris, if we do, I'd like to have a conversation with you or whomever else will be there in advance if we can do it, just so that we're sort of all in sync in terms of.
So could I get some feedback from people on the committee then too? So I know John wrote a very thoughtful piece on the financial piece, and I think the thing that Bill is trying to point out too is in our current rules, the or statement. And
Yes.
Bill can correct me. He's been on the board longer, but I believe at one point the law was with number 2. There was somebody that was their own director and their own owner, and they just wrote something from their personal bank saying they had their personal bank account and they had plenty of money.
Right.
Well, yeah, there's all kinds of potential atrocities there.
So I think that was the low point, and I think that was originally the board was looking to tighten that up by either getting rid of number 2 and allowing the other 3 options, which were a lot more robust than number 2.
Let me just respond to that.
Yeah.
I cannot see why the board, using those rules, cannot say to an applicant, you know what, your bank's statement that this guy's good for it is not adequate demonstration of financial capacity. Go back and give us something better.
With even the way it's written, where it says or, because it has you can do this.
Absolutely.
Or,
The way it's written is that it's a board of governors or trustees will sign a notarized statement of financial capacity. Something from a bank, like what you just described, doesn't even come close to meeting that requirement. I mean, I think we have to be prepared to say, look, our job is to ascertain financial capacity, and you're not doing it. And send them back.
and so I guess
What are they going to do? Sue us? Bring it on. That we've got all the tools we need when it comes to demonstrating financial capacity. All we have to do is have the balls to use them. Excuse my French.
But that bill gives them that option.
What's that?
That bill, the way it's written, gives them that option to use those weaker.
No. The bill, as it is written now, Peter,
does not.
Yesterday, is silent on the question of financial capacity prospectively.
Yeah.
Oh, financial.
It leaves it up to the board.
I'm talking about the reporting, in terms of 990s and somebody within the operational.
No,
that's removed.
None of that's in the bill. None of that's.
Yeah, that's all gone.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a.
But that was in the.
No,
was that removed? When was that removed? There was some language that suggested that was one of the ors originally, wasn't it? That's the first Bruce came up with.
Peter, I explained yesterday. That is all gone.
Okay, thank you.
It's completely new, so that's why when Haley sent out that link, it was a complete strike through, and it's new.
I did not get that. I, as you probably know, I was on a train coming to and from Philadelphia for the Super Bowl, so I was very difficult to stay organized with my cell phone on all of this. I apologize, but
we're back to the board's own rules, unaffected, and I just think that we need to be let me just divert a little bit. I'm wondering why we don't require the agency to give us the entire application at the time that we are reviewing the request for approvals of these schools. It turns out that the rule requires that the school give an overview of its organizational structure, its board of directors, including the names and addresses of its members. Mm-hmm. That's supposed to be in the application packet by the school.
And so all of that isn't in the green sheet. So I think what we could ask for too is in the green sheet for those things to be included, or if you want. The board can decide, do they want every single application? And if so, do we want it photocopied and delivered, or do we just want access to it?
It depends on whether it's a renewal. Most all of those are renewals, which
That's
are
right.
pretty
That's
simple.
right.
But for
Right.
a new one, I think we have to look at those pretty closely. Or if there's been a history of some kind of trouble, we need to look at them closely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
And that's something I think we, as a board, need to direct the agency. So if that's something I'm hearing, is that does this committee want to recommend that any new school, we get the full application, not just a green sheet? So green sheet plus the full application. And in renewal processes, John, I know that you're very interested in governance. Would you like that included in the green sheets?
Yeah, I'd like to. I want to be able to look at the financial statement myself. I know how to read financial statements. I have a pretty good nose for spotting problems and bullshit, and I want to be able to see that stuff. Now, I don't care if it's, if we get the whole packet, but I'd like to be able to have online access to it.
Okay. And my only question then, because there's something in even the current version, I'd have to go back and look at it, that some things are barred from public record.
Yeah.
Correct. Can you remind me of where that is? Something. There is something I think that it may be barred from public record, so I'm not sure how that paper handling would be affected. But that's something I'd have to go through and relook at that version.
I don't think we have to work this out right here and now. I think we're just trying to talk about Act 229, S229 as it exists now, and as it exists now is we're back to what the lawyers call the status quo ante. We're back to the board's own rules, and my own sense of it is the board's rules are okay. Maybe we haven't been as conscientious in applying them as we ought to be. I think we should never hesitate to turn back an application and say, you know what, it doesn't meet our requirements. Do better. I think we should never be afraid to do that.
Yeah.
Well, this is one of the issues. When we had the breakout groups that we were coordinating before we got shut down on 2200. We met with the independents as a smaller group, and we did spend time on the financial reporting, and I thought we had made headway in that, which pretty much concurs where we are right now. But it seemed like we took a backward step in that first 229. So anyway, so where we are now right now. Do we want to talk about what we're doing at the
special ed piece of the 229? I know John has read it. Do people need more time to review it, and would they want to send me their thoughts, or have people read the latest version? I guess it's hard to have the conversation if people haven't read that latest version.
Well, I certainly will, and I'll share thoughts if need be. But
Frank,
yep.
I just don't have the expertise to make an informed judgment as to whether the language accomplishes all our purposes or not. My sense is that if Joanne Unruh and Nicole and Jeff are on board with the language that's there, then it's going to be more than adequate to meet the needs of the special education community. And the challenge will be whether or not the independent schools are prepared to sign up for it. But that's their problem.
One of the valid things I think the independent schools really brought up, though, was the fact that they work with so many different supervisory unions and different districts. I mean, that may be going away because of Act 46, but there's so many different methods in making that happen.
Yep.
And I do think 46 will help with that, but that may be something that needs to be considered. It's just coming up with a best practice. So that way, if an independent school is working with several different districts, there's a general agreed-upon set of rules. I think that is very helpful, especially determining reimbursement for LEAs when that's happening. I know I've talked to some the schools saying that one school would reimburse at the beginning, one would be at the end, some would be like 3 in the middle. So it can be very intensive. So it's that sort of making sure it can work for everybody. I think that was one thing that may need to have a little bit more attention in this bill.
which is the premise for pre-K with the new bill.
Right. I think it's the similar things that they were being noticed, and that's why the agency is taking that over for the 166 or the proposed, is what some of the independent schools is that they're spending a lot of time and paperwork running around and not dealing with the need, but dealing with the paperwork.
As are the supervisory
I would want
unions.
that, right, and I think that should be addressed in here, and some sort of standard, if it's not in there, allowing the state board to come up with those policies.
Well, David Sharp and Michael Livingston had a conversation about this in committee day before yesterday. You might have seen it. And, Sharp has in mind some sort of consolidation of the LEAs into large regional affiliated groups so that there was less disparity within a given locality about all these administrative details. My own feeling about it, Krista, is I'd hate to sort of get 229 bogged down in that question. It seems if it's a go for the independent schools, and if it's a go for the special education community like Joanne Unruh, I'd say, why don't we just pat it on the head and say, go forth and multiply. We want, it's a good thing to do. Let's do it. And agreed, the problem that Michael Livingston and David Sharp are talking about is a legitimate problem, but I don't want to sort of Christmas tree this S229 right now.
Right.
Leave that for the House to add something to it about consolidation of LEAs if they want. But I'm just feeling like if there's a meeting of the minds on this, let's encourage them to go forth.
So the hot button subject of enrollment policy, that's still outstanding, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's addressed in this.
It is addressed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's saying that students have the right to enroll in the schools as long as it is the least instructive environment, and as long as the LA determines it meets the child's.
No, I'm not talking about special ed. You're talking about special ed?
Yeah.
Special ed, yes.
I'm talking about regular ed. I'm talking about their enrollment their enrollment policies in regards to just regular ed kids.
I think you're right. That's not included in the draft.
That was a third rail. That was always a third rail.
And I'd say let's maybe that'll get solved later. But you've got agreement on two major issues out of the three.
Yeah, no. I totally agree. But that's always been the hot button.
Well,
anyway,
I have to excuse myself. I have another meeting I have to go to.
Okay. So we might as well. Krista, could we and anybody else that wants to attend, if Bill wants to attend, could we have a conversation or before we head into Senate Ed on Friday?
Yeah. Bill, are you going to be able to make it, or is it just going to be myself and Peter?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can make it if you need me.
Well, I'd watch the weather. I think this weather is going to be sloppy all week, but that's up to you, Bill. You're welcome to, but that's a long ride to come. But
well, that's what I'm thinking. But I can.
I mean, it's fine. I think if myself and Peter go, I think that's good. I think having two of us is fine. And Peter, we can just have a conversation about kind of what direction we want to go for testimony.
And I will get on board with the latest rendition of 229. My apologies.
Okay, I'd like to see the latest version.
Haley sent it already when we were talking.
Oh, she did. Great.
Yep.
Okay. Well, anytime good tomorrow. Tomorrow is Thursday. That's a work day for you, isn't it? So,
maybe we could even just meet a little bit earlier than the 2:30.
Okay. Yeah, on Friday.
And that way, we can just meet and just clarify what we want to do for our testimony.
Okay, and then possibly, of course, then if need be, if I have any questions, I'll email you if I need any something that I have questions about before. But if that's okay with you, if I have any questions, I'll email.
Keep me in the loop on this one.
Okay. Okay. But
I'm
it's just
assuming
229.
we'll have some written testimony, or Krista will be giving some written testimony.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just 229. We're there. That's all we're there for. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, are we ready to adjourn? If there's anything else.
Well, could we summarize what we've accomplished and what the decisions are?
Sure. We're trying to figure out what we're going to be bringing before the board. I think those are the two things were the
response to the governor, and I'll do that. And then, Bill, you're going to have a response special ed that was going to be paragraph in length and kind of a more of a lofty overview and what we endorse.
Where I want to start is the great crisis with kids and blah, 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 and then work into it from there. And
I would say keeping it short, like keeping it really like half a page.
Yeah, a paragraph or two, probably two. But nothing big. Right.
And I think I'm going to, if I have to write something or something, I think I'm basically going to say what I mentioned, that from my standpoint, we're taking I don't know, I would say a neutral, but we're endorsing the bill on the pre-K, and we'll just monitor how it goes, because there's a lot in flux right now, and there's a lot of nervous Nellies out there, but I don't think that's something that we have to wade in and make
So we're going to hold off on a statement on 166 to the whole board, or no?
I'll make a statement, but I don't think we have to vote on it.
Okay.
And if anybody feels strongly about it, they can bring it up. But I don't think we have to make a vote on it.
So you'll do that for the legislative report?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, yeah. I guess is this all of what we're just discussing going to be under the legislative subcommittee report in terms of Bill and you and I guess 229 will all be part of that, right?
So at our upcoming meeting, there's a legislative report at the beginning of the meeting that you can give a report from the legislative committee, what has been going on. We also have a section after the special ed 2 reports. We have some time set aside so we can a statement from the board using the draft that's put forward by this committee. So that's what Bill
which
would have.
Two reports you're talking about now?
The special ed reports.
Yeah.
So we're having a presentation from UVM. They're coming in presenting the report.
Oh,
and
okay.
Then also,
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yep. So the 2 reports.
Is the agenda out yet?
I can get you a working copy. But yeah, that's what we had on our calendar. We said we would do at our last meeting. We said on the calendar we'd have those 2 reports, and we have those reports, and then we have the time for the follow-up from the board for the statement.
Mm-hmm. 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 Okay. All right. So while we're on, what time do you want to meet in advance of the 2:30?
I'll call you later and we'll figure it out.
Okay. And probably just meet in the cafeteria or someplace. We don't have to go off campus, I wouldn't assume. Okay.
No, this should be fine.
Okay. So is there any other business? All right. Well, Bill, we'll keep you in the loop and
Connor, go to class.
I will.
Nice try. Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Thank you all, and I'll be talking to you, Krista and Bill, soon. And Connor, have a great weekend.
You too.
All right.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye.